listening to him. Therefore he says, I make a decree. Any people, any nation, any language that speaks anything against this God, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid to ruins. For there is no other God, he says, who is able to rescue in this way. So God says through Nebuchadnezzar to the boys, you did well in disobeying Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar is excited. He makes rules, but God has to still do some work with Nebuchadnezzar. We don't have time for Daniel chapter 4, but God must still tell Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, you know, I am in charge, but I am not a control freak. I am a God who is in control, but I will not lead any man apart from his own choice or of allowing me to lead him. I must have free course in your life. You must spend time with him. You must be able to come to the fact, you must be able to see the fact that he is indeed the man of Calvary. You must be able to see that his ways are indeed ways of pleasantness. Yourself. You must be able to linger in his presence long enough till you see that his paths are paths of peace. You must see his purity. You must see his humility. You must see his self-denial. You must see his wonderful sacrifice offered on the behalf of the fallen sons of men. You must linger a little longer considering his undying love for sinners, his infinite compassion. You must be able to reckon together with God's church that indeed he is the chiefest among 10,000. You must see that his gentleness indeed will make you great. You must see that he is the one when, you know, he's called, the Bible says that he's the pearl of great price. He is the one thing which when you have every other thing. And he is the only one person, when you lose him, you lose every other thing. Bible says, for there is no other name in heaven or under the heaven given to men whereby or where which they must be saved, apart from that particular name. So I ask you this afternoon, what's your fire? What's your furnace? What's your challenge? Whose hand is threatening you? What are they sounding like? What is your response to them? This afternoon, my friends, we have evidence that God is not only waiting for us in the future Canaan, but is also traveling with us in this wilderness of 2020. He is the pillar of fire at night. He is the cloud also by day. He is the one who rains manna from heaven every morning, allows his children to collect it. He is the one who tells Moses, Moses, please strike this particular rock, water will come. He is that particular rock, the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 10 will tell you. He is that particular water, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 also will tell you. He is the man who meets with Israel's enemies. He is the man who instructs them even as they continue pursuing Canaan. He is the man who provides their every need. You remember the book of Deuteronomy says, as your days, so shall your strength be. You can imagine walking in that wilderness for 40 years. You know, the clothes which they have on are the same clothes. The shoes which they left with in Egypt are the same shoes that they used to traverse across with, even in the wilderness. Friends, read about it in the book of Psalm chapter 107. Even in the face of disobedience and rebellion, God was still God to them. Still loving, still patient, still instructive, still tender in nurturing them. You know, he says to them in the book of Exodus chapter 4, you know, as an eagle plucked, you know, watches over his children, so did I also snatch you and took care of you also through the wilderness, you know, with a particular tenderness, with a particular care. You know, it may seem that the trials of God's children are insurmountable. But you know what? 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 13 will tell you, there hath no temptation that has taken man except that which is common, that all men must face. But God will, with the temptation, provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it, that you may be able to bear it. Of all the weightiest trusts, some of us think, I'm sure we have perceptions of the greatest gifts that God can give to us, or the greatest trusts that God can give to man. And you may think that perhaps it's a beautiful house somewhere, and it's good. It may be a beautiful position somewhere, it is good. But God says, of all the weightiest trusts that I can give to man to keep on my behalf is fellowship with me in suffering. That's the Thou of Ages tells you that. And so, God is not afraid of hands, human or otherwise. He's still in charge. He's still in control. His power never wasted. His power never descending. Still potent. Still active. Still the same. The same man who, the Bible says in Isaiah chapter 40, the one who counts or who weighs the nations in the scale as dust. The one who considers men as grasshoppers before him. He says that same God is the same God today. So trust him. Trust him regardless of the circumstance and situation. God will, with the temptation, make a way of escape. It's beautiful it is pleasant when God is with you in the furnace. It is heaven. It is beautiful. It is lovely. That's where we learn of him. That's where we learn to shut other voices out. That's where we learn how to hear his voice and his voice alone. In the furnace, there. That's where he reveals himself personally to you. Perhaps you've had a knowledge about God. You've always known about him. You always hear about him. But you've never had opportunity to interact with